If you can't step away from your business for a month, then you don't have a business. You have a job.
There is no, again, that idea that you can hire someone to just get this thing off of you that feels like a burden. That's that silver bullet syndrome. One is just the shiny object syndrome. People get stuck on doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So all they're doing is delaying the handoff to a time when the stakes are higher, which is going to pull them back into the process because they're the only one that understands it because they built it themselves. It's no secret. You add direct to consumer, you add a supply chain, all of a sudden there's infinitely more variables to deal with. I'm a big believer that really until you get up to like 9 figures plus, your marketing and branding is not to attract right fit customers, but to repel wrong fit. Free yourself from your business. It is positioned to attract the right type of person. If we attract people with sort of that idea of being stuck in the business, we can hit them in the face with the stone cold facts of
cold Steve Austin on their ass. Pain sells, man. Obviously, comfort is the enemy of success. And if you want to be unstoppable, you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. It has to become a thing. That's where I want to live. 20, 30 of those in a local market. We're looking good, baby. We're looking good. But
absolutely,
we waste a lot of time.
And now the man you've been waiting for, John, the sales machine, Rankins.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is Brian, a 15-year entrepreneur who cuts through the BS to solve complex problems with simple solutions. He's built multiple 7-figure businesses, has 3 multi-7-figure exits under his belt. Now he's coaching over 500 founders and living the rugged life as a true waterman on the beaches of La Paz, Mexico. Get ready for a raw, unfiltered chat about building and selling successful businesses. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, John. Happy to be here.
Hey, man, happy to dig into how did you get involved with helping organizations grow and or exit?
So I started out my career in investment banking. So at the time I had a clean shaven face and hair on my head. I was, I very early on realized that I wasn't going to make a career out of that. So I left and I actually got into commercial real estate in Denver, Colorado. And we were taking large vacant warehouses and converting them into small office and creative office studios. And so very quickly I had a massive portfolio of small businesses. So I kind of fell in originally to sort of coaching really my tenants so that they could pay rent. And one thing led to another. We built some other businesses. We built a pretty large commercial real estate brokerage group, chain of coffee shops, a number of other things. And I kind of hit a ceiling for Denver and got involved in politics and some things that I shouldn't have done before I was 30 years old and sold everything. And I actually moved to LA at that point. And while I was in LA, originally I started going after, early stage investments. And I learned very quickly that that wasn't something that I enjoyed doing because number one, you'd meet somebody and, 3 to 6 months after meeting them, you realize that they're just trying to butter you up to ask you for money. The other is that often the investment that I was making, what was best for the investment was probably the worst thing possible for the founder. So I shifted and I started working with founders, and what originally started as just helping them with strategy and building their business, then ultimately became, what is the thing that every single founder wants? They want to be able to build and scale a business that they can step away from. And through that, that's where the business that we have today came from. It was how do we provide all of the support that a founder needs to scale and exit a business. And most of who we work with are B2B service businesses. And those are the businesses that so often the founder gets stuck in the sales process. And that's why sales has become such a core focus of what we do.
Yeah. And, it's a big thing right now, founder-led sales, especially when you're a new startup. It's almost a requirement from
It is
early on to go to market and give proof of concept. It's almost, a prerequisite that, founders lead the sales. But I know other organizations where it's been different. So what is your take on that initially with the startup? Should it be founder-led sales, or should the founder, if they've developed the product and they've never done sales, should they recruit salespeople to do it or an outsourced sales team to do it?
I believe that it should always be founder-led sales. And it's, we're biased towards working with bootstrapped companies. So, one of the things that VC investment does is it helps you bypass solving strategic problems. And so that's, if you go out and raise money, you're able to build that sales team and do those things without actually solving some of the core fundamental problems in your positioning, your product market fit, and so forth. If you think about what sales really is, you're going out, you're testing your positioning, you're testing your ICP, and you're testing your USP, your value proposition, and so forth in your messaging. If you're not doing that as a founder, you are literally giving up the most important aspect of your business to someone else. Eventually, you'll get to a point where you can move yourself out of it, and then you're focused on building the organization. But far too often, people try to distance themselves from that. A lot of times we just call it playing office. They might be doing, $500,000. They might be doing 5 million. And they're just worried about, well, who do I put here? Who do I put here? And all this. And they haven't solved the fundamental business problems. They're not doing the core work. And if you're sub 3 million building a business, if you're, especially a service business, if you're not spending at least 2 hours a day actively selling, you're wasting your time with your business.
It's too funny. I look back on my career and literally I've built and scaled sales teams and organizations in 7 countries physically. Since then, more than 10 countries around the world. And then how I coached and trained the people to become successful. The more successful they became initially, the more I saw that what they were doing that made them successful, they stopped doing. And we called it executive-itis. So instead of being, out in the field or training, even coaching new hires out in the field, they spent more time in their office trying to be executives rather than driving the sales and scaling the sales. Yeah, and we called it executive-itis. You think you went from zero to hero, and now you're back to zero because you stopped doing what you were doing in the beginning. Have you seen that a lot?
I see that all the time. And sometimes, and that takes different forms, right? Like sometimes it is where they sort of buffer themselves because they have a team and then they start to not focus on the core of the business any longer. Other times it's, oh, well, I have an operations issue, so I'm going to stop selling and focus on the operations issue. So I've just made an operations problem a sales problem. The other thing that we'll see is it's, oh, well, I need to stop and build out my CRM or my ATS or whatever it is. That it's always something, which at the end of the day, I'm sure you've read Stephen Pressfield, War of Art. It's that idea of resistance. There's all of these different ways that you can create resistance. There's always going to be a shiny thing. There's always something else you need to do. But no matter what, you wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth, right? That's what sales has to be. Until you get to a point where you have a functioning sales team, it's the same as brushing your teeth. It's the same as putting on your shoes and your underwear before you leave the house. You just have to do it every single day, or you're not going to have a successful day as a business owner.
Or it's not going to last very long.
No, it won't. And we see that too. I mean, we have, with our team, part of what we've had to bring in is a mindset expert, because we run into people who they have these mindset blocks where we literally are watching them where they're losing clients, but they refuse to go out and sell because they're looking, we call it the silver bullet syndrome. It's if I just had the right person, if I just had the right pitch, if I just had the right offer, all of a sudden everything's going to get easier. In sales, everybody thinks about quality over quantity. No, quality is the result of quantity. The more that you get out there and do it, the better you're going to get. You just have to put in the reps.
I agree. I call it next level sales. I'm writing a book called Next Level Sales, taking clients or companies from where they are to their next level, where they want to be, but using the framework of what are their needs, what is the economic factors, what are the X factors, and the timing of implementing everything and making an offer, whether it be, for a product or service. That's how you serve. And it's all about them, not about me. Yeah. Makes sense. So I call it next level sales, and and there's a next level for all of us in selling. I went from going door to door selling newspapers as a boy, mowing lawns, to literally going door to door in 7 countries selling anything from skincare, cosmetics, car care. And now we sell software to scale the team. So more of a B2B play, bootstrapped, as you would call it, bootstrap software. That is the sales machine. Let's talk a little bit about that, because you mentioned VC. So I'm all about the founder-led sales as well. And, sometimes we can all get thrown in a trap because we talk about ICP, the ideal client profile. And we talk about there's riches and niches. And we also talk about what's your go-to-market strategy. What is your methodology for refining that in companies? Because, some of us out there are agnostic. So as an example, I've noticed the 3 biggest problems companies have are lack of sales, which means lack of marketing, leads, and or lack of accountability. It comes in, you get the leads and they're not handled properly, or people can't sell, and or there's no accountability. You get the leads, you do the sales, and then money goes out the back door, or the customers aren't taken care of. And so bye. And now you're back to zero. So what's been your experience having worked with over 1,000 businesses? That's the biggest problems I see. Lack of sales, lack of marketing, lack of accountability. How about you?
Well, so some of what you're talking about, I would step out of looking at just sales and say that moves into operations and financial management of the business as well. What we do, as far as starting with the beginning of the question, as far as what is our methodology around sales, you started out talking about problems. We use what we call a situational ICP. I don't care about firmographics. I don't care about demographics, psychographics. I care about what is that situation or problem that a client is having that you can alleviate for them. And so we focus primarily on that first, is what is that situation or problem that you can alleviate. There are going to be certain then firmographics that will better align with that problem once it's identified. Then what we do is we want to identify what is that outcome that you create for somebody. Because the way that you sell is, let me pause for a second and just give you an example.
Sure.
Let's say you're walking down the street and you see a mannequin in a window with a gorgeous outfit on that you really, really like. So you go into the store. What is that it did? The end result being projected there on the mannequin is what pulled you into the store. But what gets you to buy it? You put it on, right? You're not going to buy it if you're thinking, oh, I got to gain 60 pounds and my arms have to be 4 inches shorter for this to work for me. You're not going to buy it. It's how well does it fit you today? That's exactly how we work with our clients to sell. We want to project that end outcome and show them that we deeply understand their current situation today, that challenge, that pain that they're having. And this is because we primarily work with service businesses. This is exactly what most service businesses get wrong. Instead, what they do is they tell you how they make the transformation without firmly identifying where you are today and that outcome you're going to create. That is both the positioning and the sales approach that we work on with our clients. We get rid of looking at the steps that you take and, what are the deliverables at every step and so forth. Instead, we focus on what is the value in the uninitiated prospect's words, meaning what were the words that they were using 3 or 6 months before they went to market looking for a service like yours. What value are you creating at every step of the way? They don't care that you're doing, creating a strategy that then you're going to implement for them. That's you serving yourself. How does that impact their business and help their business goals at that step? And when we combine that all together, really what we have is our clients are starting to sell transformation instead of services. And I think going back to this idea of founder-led sales, this is exactly what founders do when they get on sales calls without realizing. And this is also why when they hire salespeople, their salespeople fail, because they haven't figured out how to take, yes, I truly understand where you are today and I truly understand where you want to go. Okay, you've bought in on that. Now let me tell you how to get there. Too often they're pitching the services, they're pitching the steps along the way. So what we have to do is actually make that part of the offer and the positioning. So it is a marketing piece that's informed by sales. And we're fond of saying your offer is your business and your business is your offer. So even as you change your sales process by removing the founder step by step, you still have to change your offer to match the fact that the founder is no longer part of it. So it's a constant evolution until you get the founder out of the sales process entirely.
Amen. And so you also mentioned earlier that, being a VC and you went from investing in different things in LA and it wasn't for you. So now predominantly your company and what you do, are you a VC? Are you an angel investor? Are you an advisory service? Like what do you really do and how do you do it?
So we are a very unique advisory and consulting service. So we have a team, all of our strategy advisors have scaled and exited 8-figure B2B companies themselves. We pair them up with founders, and then we have a team of subject matter experts and other services that we can plug in. And so we're able to dramatically accelerate the growth of a company because you're, first of all, getting the perspective of somebody who's been there. And then let's say you have an HR issue. Let's say you have a marketing issue, a sales issue, finance issue, hiring or process issue. We can bring in those experts immediately to be able to bring in those additional perspectives to help solve whatever that challenge is for you. And so what we're able to do is shorten the decision-making time and improve the quality of decisions. And so this is how we're getting our clients to do 2x, 5x, even 10x year over year, because we're able to dramatically shorten. It's really built around, though, the founder-led business, because so much of what we have to deal with is sort of fixing the founder, if you will. The first few months is getting the right habits and the right actions in place, and then we can start solving problems. I mean, really, typically the first doubling of the business is just getting the right habits in place. And then from there, when we start actually applying strategy and so forth, then we can really scale the business.
I love it. And yeah, so that's the psychology, right? More so than the methodology.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly not the first person to say this, but mediocre done consistently will absolutely kill spectacular done inconsistently. You can be the best in the world and be super inconsistent, and you will not do nearly as well as somebody who's mediocre, who's incredibly consistent.
Yeah, it's better to be consistently good than occasionally great.
Exactly.
Every day, every day, every day. That's what I used to tell my people.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And so building that consistency, building that drive. But then the other thing that we have to do within these businesses, we have sort of two different frameworks where the businesses come in. They're either high growth and they're kind of at that point where the decisions have gotten so large that they can't kind of just make them decision by decision. They need to be able to start thinking several steps ahead. Or it's the business where they've been fairly stagnant, either just plateaued entirely or plateaued in growth rate, and they can't figure out how to get off of that. The ones that are plateaued in growth rate or plateaued, that's a much bigger challenge because we actually have to shift the culture into high growth. And in those teams, we're often seeing anywhere from 10 to sometimes as much as 40% of the team has to turn over because they just can't make that transition. But to further answer your question about how we're structured, not only do we come in as a paid consultant, but with certain businesses, we either partner or we actually even take out the founder in what we call an exit partnership. So this is where we actually reposition the business. We do a knowledge transfer, and then our team comes in and we actually start growing the business. And the way that it's structured financially, we're incentivized to grow the business quite a bit. And if you know anything about the multiples of selling these service businesses, if the founder's involved, you're basically selling at 1 to maybe 1.2 EBITDA, a lot of times less than 1 times EBITDA. But as soon as we remove the founder, now we're talking, 2.5 to 3.5 or more. And so we're able to remove the founder, bring in our team, accelerate that growth, and then ultimately plug in the people so that it can be a self-operating entity that can be sold.
And when you say service businesses, predominantly, what's the main market of the service businesses you actually target?
We're actually pretty agnostic. I would say that about 50 to 55% of our clients would identify as some sort of agency or consultancy. So that would include everything from marketing agencies, strategy consultancies, brand strategy consultancies, even development shops. We also have things like events companies, property management companies. We have virtual restaurant companies as clients. So as long as you are B2B without a physical product, without a supply chain, and without direct to consumer, we'll work with you. And I think one of the other things that makes us unique is unlike a lot of other teams that service sort of this end of the market, we don't sell a business model. We help identify what is the best business model for your business and then help accelerate it. So there's times where we're taking something from our virtual restaurant clients and introducing it to an agency because there's crossover there and there's a way to stand out and really differentiate yourself in the market.
I get it. And what do you think the biggest challenge is for these service businesses? Like, what is the biggest challenge that you find?
I think fundamentally, it depends on what stage they're at. Fundamentally, one of them is positioning because they're just selling themselves as just another service. So, the number of people that come to us who they're getting anywhere from 70 to 100% of their revenue from referrals, that immediately is a red flag. It's a red flag if you're getting more than 30% of your business from referrals, hands down. And I know that that's not what a lot of people want to hear. It means your positioning sucks. The other side, we see.
That's a huge caveat right there.
Yeah, it is. It's something that, and look, I'll give the listeners something with that. If you get most of your business from referrals, every single referral that you receive, whether you close it or not, you go back to the person that made that referral and ask them, tell me exactly the words that you used to pitch me to this person. Because you want to find out how your clients are pitching you better than you're pitching yourself to the market.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah. The other thing that we see is it's less of a sales issue and more of a management issue. We talk about the rule of 20. And so if you go on like LinkedIn Sales Navigator, you're going to see a lot of businesses cap out around 20 people. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is sort of the dinner party example. You invite 15, 20 people to dinner at a restaurant. You can make the reservation and then sort of let everything sort of self-manage itself. You invite 35, 45 people, then you actually have to manage like where are the coats going, how are we going to deal with the check, when's the food coming out, and so forth. So it's a completely different type of management. The other thing that we see is we call it the difference between a clone hire and a growth hire. A clone hire is what most founders do early on. It's the type of hire that's coming in and doing something that you could do, but is low value or you just don't enjoy doing to free up your time. The admin comes in and does 5% of what you can do. The strategist comes in and does 15% of what you can do. Those are the hires that you're creating, the strict SOPs for, the processes and so forth. What they don't know how to do is bring in the growth hire. That's bringing in somebody with outside serious knowledge that can actually exponentially start to grow an area of your business. That's a completely different framework for bringing them on. You manage them differently. You have to deal with them differently. And so if you think about it like arms, growth hires are like getting an additional arm. At some point, like if you have 25 additional arms, that's going to be hard to manage. It's better off to have another head managing those arms. And so that's where those growth hires come in. And so I think understanding when and where to bring those in is a little bit of an art form because it's different in every business. If you do it too early, then they're going to want to be treated like a founder. You do it too late, they're frustrated that the business is a mess and everything's too static and they can't really make an impact on the business. But those are two of the key things that we see.
Yeah, I get it. And, I've made those mistakes myself, right? And essentially, though, if the founder is working on nonsense or doing admin and not founder-led sales, then that's not even a clone hire. I don't even want to say it. It's a drone hire. Just go do that thing. Okay? Because it needs to be done. It's not, that important, but that shit needs to be done too, right? But yeah, a lot of the times, I have to get out of my own way. You know what I mean? Because I'm motivated. You don't need to teach me habits or, I can always improve my skill set, but I kind of got the habits down. We're pretty old school over here, right? Tell me about what's the biggest challenge you've ever faced in basically scaling one of these businesses and that became your biggest success story.
So as far as biggest challenge, I think I'll give an example of a virtual restaurant company that I worked with that when we got involved, here was somebody whose experience was limited to working basically in restaurants and had a little bit of experience in virtual restaurants. He had no management experience or very little management experience outside of restaurants. And he was already doing 7 figures solo. with this business. But when I got involved, and this was before we even had the team behind us, but he's still a client today. I think the biggest challenge was educating a team that could work at scale and transferring the knowledge from the founder to the team. Because it is, when we talk about virtual restaurants, everybody has a very unique idea in their head of what a virtual restaurant is. Some people think, oh, does that mean that you're in like VR? Does that mean that you're a ghost kitchen? Does that mean? And it was doing that education and actually building the team here in Mexico to do the sales for him. And so and we did this through a lot of knowledge extraction, bringing in a number of different consultants and so forth, really to pull out so that we could take from, when he was selling, he grew up in restaurants, so he could immediately have that rapport with the restaurant owner. But how do we take that same level of rapport and translate that into somebody who may have never worked in a restaurant before, may have not even ever been to the US before, but is here in Mexico and is selling on behalf of him? And so, now he is one of, I believe, as far as revenue goes, he's the 7th largest. As far as EBITDA goes, he's the 3rd largest virtual restaurant company in the States now.
And what does the virtual restaurant company do?
In his case, what they do is they go in and he's got a number of brands that he's created based on looking at like DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Grubhub data, seeing what sells, where is there a gap in the market, and then he'll go out to restaurants, and let's say that you run a diner, and he says, okay, how many extra orders could you do in an evening? You say, well, I got capacity for at least an extra 80 or 100. Cool, I'll fill that with these. So he'll send you a tablet, takes you through training on how to make the food. You basically plug in the tablet. He manages everything on Grubhub and Uber Eats, and you just start getting orders in. He takes a percentage of it, and you're able to fill all that excess kitchen capacity. It's literally selling revenue.
I love it. Brilliant. And you scaled him from what to what?
So when he came to us, he was at about 2.5, and he's at, last that we discussed revenue, was a little over 25. So he's growing very, very fast now. So
it's
10x.
Working.
Yeah, it definitely will.
Hey folks, if you're enjoying this episode and you're picking up what I'm putting down and what the guests are actually putting out there, do me a favor, like and comment what you liked about the episode, or even comment what would you like to hear, what topics would you like to hear in the future, because believe me, it matters. I read absolutely every single one of them, and I want to bring you more and more value to help companies scale so that we can grow this podcast to make a bigger difference. Now let's get back to the show. So what was he doing wrong?
In his case, he was trying to do everything himself. And I would say, and he knows this, we would have been probably 3x where he's at today had he made decisions faster. I mean, success is not the result of hard work. It's the result of hard decisions. And so the faster that you can make hard decisions and start taking action, the faster that you're going to grow. So if you're at a point where, you've got your operations dialed in and you're not getting the revenue, you need to lean into how do you start transferring that sales knowledge. And that's something a lot of people that are very, very specific on their brand, very, very specific on their offer, they have a hard time transferring that knowledge and trusting someone else to do it. And so learning to trust somebody, just getting out there and doing it. And in his case, we had to set up, tiered prospects where, this team comes in and they start out on the lowest tier, just basically cutting their teeth so that we're not burning through the top level prospects. But we had to do that not just for training purposes, but to get the founder comfortable with the process of bringing in people to sell on his behalf.
Yeah, and there has to be, like you said earlier, a knowledge transfer. So how do you guys set up a system? Because obviously, where the founder can step away. Because for me, if you can't step away from your business for a month, then you don't have a business. You have a job.
Agreed. So we go first to looking at their positioning and their offer, because what we're trying to do is externalize the things that they're doing on the sales calls into the brand and into the positioning and into the offer. Then what we do is we systematically move them out of sales, starting at like the earliest stage, the identifying leads, outreach, ultimately getting up to scheduling the initial connection call. Then we'll start layering in more of a BDR that is taking those initial connect calls, finally then removing the founder from the closing process. But we do it that way because, especially in service businesses, the highest failure rate by about X of any position is in sales. And it's because too often they say, okay, I'm ready to get out of sales. You're head of sales. And they will expect somebody else to come in and build out the sales process for them instead of incrementally removing themselves from the process. And when we do it that way, we can actually get exponential growth in sales through removing the founder from the process. There is no, again, that idea that you can hire someone to just get this thing off of you that feels like a burden. That's that silver bullet syndrome that I mentioned earlier. There's not going to be someone that you can hire that can come in and just build the sales team and magically pull you out of it if you've never been able to have somebody else sell for you in the past.
Yeah. So I love it. There's a big difference going to $1 million and then going to 10 million. What do you see as the blocker or the biggest challenge founders go through going from 7 to 8 figures? And do you have how do you strategically break them through that, or tactically even?
Yeah, I think, one is just the shiny object syndrome. People get stuck on doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So what we end up seeing is one of the reasons that people end up stalling out in that growth process. I'll use the example of like a CRM or a project management system or something like that. The founder, because they're doing sales, they get involved in building it. So all they're doing is delaying the handoff to a time when the stakes are higher, which is going to pull them back into the process because they're the only one that understands it because they've built it themselves. There's a lot of other concepts within that, whether it's building processes or so forth, that founders are doing too much themselves instead of focusing on building the team that builds it for them. That's a massive shift. To get up to $1 million, that's a lot of you doing the hustle, a lot of you doing the work yourself. I would really differentiate. It's really getting up to, there's a lot of businesses that get to $1 million, even get to 1.1 and then fall back down. The real shift is once you get up to like 2.5. Once you get up to 2.5, that's where you're actually in the position where you're really building a business that has to grow itself. That's switching from the how to the who mentality. And so it's understanding who do you bring in, what are they doing, and every single day, by the time that you're at that level, we check in with our founders. Their day should materially change quarter by quarter because they should be changing what they're doing within their business. They're selling more. They're using that revenue to build the team up, to build the team up, to build the team up. And too often what we see is something that you mentioned earlier. It's the curse of comfort. That you get up to a point, you're finally making really good money. You might be, running a $5 million business, bringing home $750 million a year, and you don't want to take those risks any longer. And what generally happens is clients come to us when they got comfortable there, and then something happens because they hadn't built out their team and built redundancy in their team. And they went from being really comfortable and living at a certain level to, oh shit, like I just lost 3 of my key people because one guy left and took 2 others. And now I've got to hustle to try to get back to where I was. So I would say it's comfort, it's distraction. And then it's also, just not challenging yourself every single day to push to the next level, because the number of people I've talked to that are doing, 1, 2, 3 million, and they're like, oh yeah, we've been growing 20% year over year. You know how long that's going to take you to get to 10 million to where you can actually bring in like an investable CEO to run that company for you? It's going to take you a really, really long time. And so when we work with our founders, it's literally shifting that mindset and just breaking the idea that there's limitations on growth, because especially with service businesses, they are infinitely scalable if the founder would just get out of the way of the business.
Yeah. And you said earlier, your firm is agnostic, but niche to service-based businesses. That's your ideal client profile, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
how did you being agnostic to, being an advisory service for companies that are in the service business, did you ever have a challenge getting your ICP right? And or where do you see people failing to get it right? And is that ever the problem?
So our ICP, it's no secret. The reason that I decided to focus this business on B2B services is because they're relatively simple, right? There's only about a dozen different levers that we can pull. You add direct to consumer, you add a supply chain, all of a sudden there's infinitely more variables to deal with. So this made it simple for us. Really what we end up with, and this goes to marketing and branding. I'm a big believer that really until you get up to like 9 figures plus, your marketing and branding is not to attract right fit customers, but to repel wrong fit. And so really, if you look at our branding, it is pretty aggressive. It's, scale and get the F out. It is, free yourself from your business. It is positioned to attract the right type of person and repel the wrong fit. And so our biggest challenge really comes down to, we only work with somewhere between 60 to maybe 70% of the people that come to us and express an interest in wanting to work with us, because we have to go through and actually make sure that they have what it takes to get to that next level. And so initially, I think that, I had a bit of a challenge. I had, some clout in the market. People knew who I was. I'd run other businesses. So I brought in a few clients, but then actually going out and prospecting and bringing in net new connections, that really came down to our positioning and showing people that we could solve a problem in a new way. That ICP for us, it's really a never ending ICP, because if you look at, even when people come to us, we have to educate them on, here's 2 of the pain points that get people to flip the switch and want to work with us. One is, at every point, every founder of a service business is going to have make one of 2 decisions. Either I'm going to sell it for about 1x EBITDA, or I'm going to have to shift into high growth mode so I can have something worth selling. So why wait 5 years to do that? Why not start now? The other is that 1 out of 11 businesses listed for sale in the United States sells. When you look at service businesses, it's about 1 out of 18 to 1 out of 24, depending on the statistics you look at. So the chances of you actually even making that 1x EBITDA is pretty low unless you do something to make your business stand out. So we really, once we attract people with sort of that idea of being stuck in the business, we can hit them in the face with the stone cold facts of, if you want that freedom, that you
stone cold Steve Austin on their ass.
I guess I kind of got that look back.
Pain sells, man. That's because obviously comfort is the enemy of success. And if you want to be unstoppable, you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Absolutely. It has to become a thing, right? That's 100%. What I've found. And I've gotten distracted along the way too, where, I developed digital systems and software to run. At one point, I was managing over 3,000 sales guys in several countries throughout Southeast Asia using Excel spreadsheets. And I was literally frying. My brain was frying. I was burnt out. My health wasn't very good. So I'm like, I got to automate this stuff. Because what drives salespeople is rewards, recognition, competition, compensation, levels of development. And, I'm like, if I could only manage, track, measure, align, and reward with this psychology and the methodology and provide that to companies to scale, then I could help a lot more people, and myself included, right? But then it wasn't about just finding my ICP. What you're saying is it wasn't just about qualifying a client. A lot of it is disqualifying people that are just going to waste your time. And I've found that to be true, because initially when we went to market, and we just went to market last year, really started throwing ads out there for the sales machine, and we're a performance-based software system. Whether it's data performance or people performance, we can do both. But the challenge was when we started throwing ads out there, we got a lot of people that, they have like 5 employees, 6 employees, 3 employees. And I'm like, this is a complete waste of time. The amount of money that I have to invest, and I've spent a couple $1 million developing our systems, right? This just isn't going to work. And then we started signing, manufacturing distribution companies. And they were referral, but they're a good referral because ultimately they're $100,000 client.
Yeah.
And that's where I want to live, right? I mean, 20, 30 of those in a local market, we're looking good, baby. We're looking good. But
Absolutely.
we waste a lot of time initially working with a bunch of, I wouldn't say they're tire kickers. They want to sign up, they want to spend, small money, but it's really just not worth it. It's so we've created a model now that there's do it yourself, there's done with you and done for you, right? The done with you is corporate clients, and or done for you is we do the implementation, customization of a software based on your industry. But it's been really tricky to develop a go-to-market strategy because, my brick and mortar, we've been around for 30 years, but now I built this data performance management system and a people performance management system with sales, marketing, achievements, retention, and training. We call it SMART.
Yeah.
All of that is built into a system. So it eliminates a lot of the nonsense where you can manage, track, measure, align, and reward your people and exit the business. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but going to market has been a bitch. Like, I'll just admit it. It's been a bitch. We spent money on marketing and it's been a challenge. Like, I'm an expert in building and scaling sales teams, but defining that ICP that's going to allow me to achieve what I want to achieve, which is at least $100 million valuation in 5 years, means I got to get to 10 million because I'm a software company and I can be worth 10x at doing 10 million.
And I think you actually already defined it. So let me go back to something you said earlier. So you defined the pain that you were having, the frustration of managing 3,000 employees with an Excel spreadsheet. You defined the problem. There's other people that have that same pain and that same problem awareness. But now you can introduce a solution. This is how, when we use the situational ICP, we're looking for people that have that same pain, right? Because people go from pain to problem to solution aware, and then ultimately to brand aware. You want to catch them when they're pain aware, because only about 2 to 3% of your total addressable market is going to be in the solution aware out there in the market looking for that solution at any given time. But if you can say, hey, I understand your pain, introduce them to the problem, and then therefore you're also then introducing the solution, you have a much higher opportunity to actually close. And so we look at, you talked about how you've got done for you, done with you, and do it yourself. We kind of switched that framework a little bit with the situational ICP. We call it the dartboard. So at the center of the dartboard is the person or the firm that's having the exact problem that you solve. Secondary ICP is one of two things. In your case, it would be somebody who sort of aspires to have that level of the problem, but they're not there yet. The other way that we also look at this, especially with consulting firms, is it's somebody that says, hey, I have a very similar problem, but mine's more complex or mine's a little bit different. And then the tertiary, the third ICP, is the ones that are really the do-it-yourselfers. They're really the ones that are just consuming information at that point. But the interesting thing is when you have a complex solution, when you focus in that dartboard ICP and you focus in on one key problem that you solve, and we've done this with a number of very complex offers that otherwise had to be sold with white papers, what ends up happening is you have somebody who has a much more complex problem that says, that sounds like my problem, but it's more complex. But I see how well you solve that problem. Take a look at mine. That's why some of our clients get 80% of their business from that secondary ICP, because they're able to clearly articulate a core problem that they solve, but that's not all they can do. So that's the branding that attracts them in and gets somebody actually on the sales call to then explore the much deeper and much more effective strategy. So I think you've already identified your ICP from a situational perspective. Now you have to look at from the outside, what are the indications of pain? So how do you identify? Because we say you haven't identified your situational ICP if you can't identify with a very high degree of certainty that somebody's experiencing that pain without having talked to them. So what are those indications? Yeah.
Priceless. Because, I came from direct sales selling B2C as an example, skincare, car care, cosmetics, and literally managing all these thousands of people. Ultimately, we were promoting them into their own businesses. And initially, as a single level marketing company, they were owning their own business. They were distributors, but they would have 20 guys, but I would manage all of them. So what we found was, and this is funny because, what I didn't realize is I was trying to market to direct sales companies or market to real estate companies, but they're all independent and they don't have the money to pay for all these agents to have a seat in the sales machine. But what we found was manufacturers also have distributors. So the biggest client we signed, they do $80 million in sales a year. 80 million, right? And some of their distributors do 5 million, 10 million. And they're just distributors that are distributing their construction materials, their epoxy, their different stuff they manufacture. They do so much money that they need automation to scale, right? And I found out that when we went in there and we did a scope of work and we found out their needs, right? Because I don't sell something to you unless I find out your problem. Same as you, right?
Yep.
My mindset before is I have to go after these real estate companies, insurance companies, because that was what I was doing. But now what I found out is those people don't want to invest that kind of money and they don't want to scale. They're already comfortable. But these manufacturers, as an example, they were using an Excel spreadsheet and it's taken them 6 weeks because there's literally, thousands of transactions, 6 weeks to make sense of the data in Excel, to do all the data entry. And then it takes finance another week. So we built a data performance management system, a data warehouse incorporated within our system. And now they can see it in an hour, 1 hour.
Amazing. Yeah.
In 1 hour. And they're flipping out.
So you hit that pain point. You've created a solution that solves that pain, and that's a pain that goes up the chain of command. Because at one level, you're dealing with that more emotional pain, those sales managers, the frustration, the time, just boredom of going through all those sheets. But then at the higher level, now CFOs, CROs can make much faster, better informed decisions. So you've got a number of different things that you can hit up the chain, that you can hit those individual pain points, giving you different points that you can actually enter into an organization.
Yeah. And so that's been my journey. And I'm like, do I really want 1 million clients giving me $10, or do I want 100,000 giving me 100,000? And that's about me, but I'm trying to solve a bigger problem for bigger companies. You want to make bigger money? Solve bigger problems. That's a fact of life. And the number one thing that people don't do or don't like to do is think. They don't want to do that work because that's the deep work. It's easy. And I'm not talking shit. I've had just about every job you can imagine, from a paper boy going door to door mowing lawns. My first job was a dishwasher. Then I became a janitor. Then I became a porter at a hotel. Then I went into the military and was poking holes on a nuclear powered submarine for 4 years. Like, I've done some shit. I've sorted tomatoes in summer, right? Like midnight shift. And that's hard work, but you don't use your brain to do that work. You know what I mean? So I want to solve bigger problems to make more money, but also coming from service to solve ordinary companies' challenges so that they can become extraordinary companies and scale. So That's been my journey. I share that with you because this is a case study for you as an example. And or have you ever seen this kind of problem? Like, I thought my ICP was direct sales companies. Guess what? I invested $2 million to solve my own problem and incorporated it within my business. However, the people that I was attracting with my marketing message were people that didn't have the amount of money they needed to invest to scale. And now what I found out is, the niche I want are companies that have distribution channels. They manufacture and or they have their own big sales team in-house, not independent contractors or independent real estate agents or independent insurance agents, because they don't, for the most part, want to invest in those independent ones. Because like you said earlier, in the service business, the highest turnover rate of every role in an organization, 4 times every other role, is salespeople. Well, guess what? Those numbers are real. Those numbers are real. It's the highest turnover occupation in the world, sales, right?
Yeah.
So I want to solve that problem.
Well, let me step back really quick too to something that we were talking about before. I could have saved you those $2 million that you spent on marketing.
But I invested in the software.
Okay. Yeah. The marketing side though, this is where that founder-led selling comes in. Because what we'll do is we put our clients on sprints. So we'll update really just their LinkedIn profile. Like, we don't even need to update their website, just their LinkedIn profile, and then have them go out and target for 2 to 3 weeks of particular ICP with particular messaging. We track those results. If we're not getting traction, we switch to the next one. So typically within anywhere from 1 to 3 months, we've dialed in the messaging and the ICP with really no real investment other than time. And they're generally making some sales throughout the process. So the process is paying for itself. So this is why I believe founder-led sales is so important, because you're there, you understand the product better than anyone else. And if you're getting people on the phone and you just drill through that and you max out what you can do on LinkedIn or any other platform, whether you're doing cold outreach or whatever, you can identify that ICP and shorten that go-to-market. I mean, heck, I have clients that do $100,000 go-to-market planning and execution, but you can do it yourself. And that comes back to what I was saying before. You can either invest money to try to bypass solving a strategic problem, or you can just do the work and spend a little bit of time. I've yet to meet a company that in no more than 24 months of strategic execution could they have bypassed the need for VC investment. They just don't want to wait the time. And there's some products that need to go to market faster, but a lot of people are just doing it because they're impatient and they want to try to shortcut that.
Yeah, I'm quite clear. Been in the game for a while now. Software game, I'm the new kid on the block, but I'm not new at doing business. And I'm not new. I've done consulting and charged clients $100,000 and increased their business by $5 million in a year. I've worked with a supplement company, and literally supplements for livestock, and took her company from 20 million a year to I increased their sales by 5 million in 1 year. And they gave me $100,000. Yeah, because most people don't know how to build and scale sales teams, right?
No, they don't. Most people don't even know how to sell, right? Like, most of what people do is what we call empathetic selling. You're buying from me because you like me as a person and you trust me as a person, and I'm the founder. Most people don't know how to get out of that empathetic selling mode and actually sell value, actually sell an outcome, actually engage in true sales. So most people that are selling for themselves, they are literally just in that empathetic selling mode. They're personable enough and trustworthy enough that people buy into them as an individual, not as the business. It requires somebody with your insight and your skill to also help those people break out of that and learn how to actually sell, rather than just basically, develop like an economic relationship based on likability.
And yeah, exactly. It's got to be value driven. So in B2B in our space now, like I said, I've had to go to the next level. And like you said, like the mannequin in the store, you've got to be able to show the dress right, is already the final outcome. So the final outcome was we can show you all your data in an hour, in as little as an hour. And so you're not missing out on trends. You're not running out of inventory, because a lot of times these big manufacturers, you know, year on year data, like we uploaded 4 years of their data in a weekend, and they're just blown away. And there's the sales performance, the marketing performance, the accountability through achievements. They're like, where were you? And I'm like,
No, it
I
sounds
was
like
also
an
saying,
solution to it.
where were you?
Yeah. But that's, you mentioned value, but I think that value is part of the equation. What we've been seeing more and more, especially over the last several years, is not necessarily leading with value, but leading with authority, like your podcast, the logos that you have on your website and so forth. Authority is becoming more and more and more important. And so if you're not putting yourself out there, if you're not building that authority, when somebody goes to your LinkedIn profile, when somebody goes to your website, they should see you positioned as an authority, not just delivering value. It's not even on LinkedIn, you don't see people leading as much anymore with hey, here's my free ebook, that type of thing. It's instead people position themselves first as an authority, and that's what opens the door. It's authority. Then from there, you build up rapport, and then you can deliver value. Because if you deliver value too fast, people are cautious these days.
Amen. I was having a conversation with some influencers. It's not about, early on, 100 years ago, it's what you know is how you earn money, except for the wealthy, the super wealthy. And then it's who you know. And now it's who knows you.
Yep. That's very well put.
So, man, this has been spectacular. How do people work with you? And Brian, are you a boarder?
Yes, skate, surf, paddle. That's actually my designed by one of my all-time favorite musicians, Lee Scratch Perry.
Oh, nice. I can dig it. I'd love to continue the conversation, and definitely find out how we can, exchange ideas and or look at how we can, potentially even work together. It's been a great show. How do people find you, Brian? Do they have to hunt you down in Mexico?
Yeah, you can come down here to Mexico City and find me. I'm the bald bearded Viking running around. If you're not willing to hop on a flight, you can check out strategyladders.com. You can check out our podcast, Strategy Ladders, on all platforms, or you can find me on LinkedIn, sbriansmith.com or sbriansmith on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only SBRIAN Smith on LinkedIn.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to 5X or, scale your business with the proven professionals, worked with over 1,000 founders, ladies and gentlemen, look him up, Brian Smith. Brian, that was excellent, dude. That's a wrap, folks. Thanks for joining me today. And if you got value from this episode, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and refer a friend. And if you want even more value, go to thesalesmachine.com. Click on resources, and there's tons of resources there to increase profits and drive performance in your business. Right on, come on.